From artistic pranks to terrible waxworks and people who destroyed masterpieces, let's check out the craziest things ever seen in museums, starting with some historical doppelgangers. Aside from changing fashion trends and beauty standards, people will always look like, well, people, which is why every once in a while someone will stumble across an old painting or statue that looks a little too familiar. Take this anonymous fellow matching the gesture of a French painter, Gustave Courbet. In his self-portrait, Le Désespéré, or The Desperate Man, he found his sorrowful twin in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, but he's not alone. Twitter user Carson T. Cody also found his historical double on the wall of the Met Museum in New York, in a painting from the 1850s called Young Husband, First Marketing. Pretty uncanny, right? Other doppelgangers have appeared in solid marble, and this man found his match in a sculpture of an ancient Roman emperor, Hadrian, at the Louvre in Abu Dhabi. Thankfully, the guy on the left hasn't lost any chunks of his face, unlike his marble lookalike. But speaking of missing pieces, this individual found their perfect counterpart in a museum, as he found his two missing fingers displayed in the original Louvre in Paris. The marble hand originally belonged to the Winged Victory of Samothrace, a Greek statue from 190 BC that's one of the most famous pieces in the Louvre. Finding yourself in an ancient masterpiece is pretty cool, but in Italy's Museo del Scienze, this young fellow discovered a less flattering double that practically proved he'd lived as a caveman, or cave boy, in a previous life. We'll look at more doppelgangers in a moment, but first, let's check out an artist who found his own artwork in a museum by placing it there himself. In 2005, the famous British street artist Banksy revealed that at the start of his career, he got his artwork into galleries by entering them in disguise and simply hanging the pieces on the wall. In 2003, Banksy dressed up as an old man and entered the Tate Britain in London before hanging one of his paintings on the wall next to some renowned 19th century landscapes. The painting, called Crime Watch UK Has Ruined the Countryside for All of Us, depicts Banksy's own peaceful watercolor scene, only his is covered with police tape. Shortly after it was placed there, it fell on the floor and was found by a security guard, who quickly realized it was a prank. They subsequently removed the painting and left it in the lost property section of the gallery. But seeing as Banksy's most expensive artwork sold for over $24 million in 2021, that was probably one of the most valuable things ever left in a lost and found. In 2004, Banksy struck again when he paid a visit to the Louvre in Paris. There, he took the opportunity to put his own version of one of the world's most famous paintings, Da Vinci's Mona Lisa. Now, as a twist, Banksy's version had a yellow smiley face, which is why he dubbed it the Mona Lisa Smile. While there's little information available on how long the painting was left on the wall, in 2006, it sold for more than $75,000 at auction. The value of Banksy's art has skyrocketed since then. So if you want to start a career as an artist and get your work featured in a gallery, just walking straight in and hanging it up yourself clearly works pretty well. Ever feel overwhelmed staring at a blank slide deck or a half-built website? You're not alone, and you don't have to struggle anymore. Meet Gamma, an AI-powered creative partner that turns ideas into polished presentations, websites, and documents in minutes. Run web searches inside your deck, generate executive summaries instantly, or paste a single link and watch it become a customizable presentation. No formatting headaches, no design stress. Need a different audience? Rewrite and redesign in seconds. The built-in image generation feature makes it even easier. Paired with Claude, an AI assistant that helps you think, write, analyze, and organize ideas, your workflow becomes seamless. Claude helps you brainstorm pitches, refine strategy, summarize research, and pull insights from Gmail, GitHub, Notion, or HubSpot. Gamma then transforms that thinking or live data into a ready-to-share presentation. Best of all, it's free to start. Join over 50 million users at gamma.app and create smarter, faster presentations today. Another way of finding yourself in a museum is by accidentally becoming part of the artwork. In 2018, an anonymous man in his 60s took becoming one with art to a brand new level. He was browsing the Museum of Contemporary Art in Porto, Portugal, when he happened upon an installation by British sculptor Anish Kapoor. The installation, called Descent into Limbo, is basically a pole fixed in the center of the floor inside a large concrete room. In order to give the illusion of an endless void, the sides of the 8-foot deep hole are coated in an extremely dark, light-absorbing shade of black pigment, which makes the bottom of the pit invisible. The work was created in 1992, and previous visitors had questioned whether Descent into Limbo featured an actual hole or whether it was just a circle on the floor painted with super black paint. The man in Porto settled this debate in 2018 because despite there being several warning signs and staff members inside the installation, he wandered so close that he fell into it. No, I'm not kidding. While he was hospitalized with minor injuries and Descent into Limbo had to be closed for security updates and minor restorations, both man and artwork lived to see another day. But there was no question they'd both suffered a fall from grace. Falling into an installation is one thing, but this next couple became part of an art exhibit by accidentally destroying it. In April 2021, they visited a street art exhibition at a mall in Seoul, South Korea. There, they encountered a large, unframed canvas with an array of brushes and paint tubes scattered across the ground beneath it. They interpreted this as an invitation to contribute to the piece. They added 3 large, dark splotches across the canvas and merrily went about their tour of the exhibition until about a half hour later they were unexpectedly apprehended by mall cops and taken into custody. Apparently, Paul Blart and co. had witnessed their every move on CCTV, which wouldn't have meant much if the piece wasn't worth $500,000. The confusing art supplies the couple had used were not in fact there to request participation, but they were the very same items the artist had used to complete the work and were being displayed as part of the piece. The artwork had been painted in 2016 by American artist John Won. But thankfully, despite the painting's obvious defacing, the exhibition organizers opted not to press charges, understanding that the couple made an honest mistake. Since the ordeal, the vandalized artwork remains on view, only now with an additional wire barrier and a sign to warn viewers against participating. So despite being arrested during their trip to the mall, I bet the couple secretly had the time of their lives. After all, their handiwork is now part of a $500,000 art piece on display for the world to admire. Later, we'll look at another person who destroyed a piece of art by eating it. But first, let's take a look at someone who snuck their artwork into a museum intentionally with an incredible practical joke. If a Google search for pineapple decor tells us anything, it's that we humans love to stamp that prickly sucker on anything and everything in sight. But in 2017, the humble pineapple was displayed as a piece of high art during an exhibition at the Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen, Scotland. 2 college students, Lloyd Jack and Ruari Gray, were browsing the exhibition when they saw an empty table that simply begged to be occupied. So the pair zipped over to a nearby supermarket, bought a random pineapple, and sneakily placed it onto the table. No one noticed their covert prank, and the pals left the exhibition, with the pineapple remaining in place. 4 days passed, and when the boys returned to the exhibition, they were shocked to discover that their pineapple was now protected by a glass display case, having been mistaken for a piece of art. What's more, people were observing the pineapple and discussing what the art piece meant. It was a hilarious turn of events that highlighted how anything in a gallery setting could be seen as meaningful art that's worth exorbitant amounts of money. But unfortunately, once the ruse was discovered by the organizers, they weren't amused to find their exhibition had been hijacked by a random piece of fruit. After some investigating, the organizers discovered that the case had been placed there by the janitor, although it was unclear whether the act had been motivated by humor, confusion, or artistic insight. Whatever the janitor's reasons for his inadvertent collaboration with the Pineapple Boys, this isn't the only time that a random object has been mistaken for a piece of art. But before we get to that, it's time to get some More museum doppelgangers. When this guy visited the Met Museum, his strong hair game gave him a striking resemblance to a figure in Don Andrés de Aronde y la Cal, a painting from the 1600s by the Spanish artist Bartolomé Esteban Murillos. But it looks uncannily like this guy, and I just wish he'd brought his dog to the gallery too. These two totally unrelated men both happen to resemble the 1884 painting Vsevolod Mikhailovich Garshin, depicting a Russian author by the same name looking deeply sad.
You just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
Even though the pair of modern gents don't necessarily resemble each other side by side, it's hard to deny that they both are dead ringers for the man in the painting. Maybe it's the beards, freckles, and slightly unkempt hair. This fellow is seemingly the long-lost descendant of the armored man in this portrait hanging in California's Norton Simon Museum. It's as if the soldier has marched straight out of the painting into real life. The artwork is Mars Vigilant by Dutch artist Jan van Billiert. From around 1630, this Netherlandish figure is dressed for battle against Spain during the lengthy 8 Years' War. But today, he looks more prepared for a grocery store run than the battlefield. From the beard to the nose to the eyes, I'm not convinced this guy's not a time traveler. Because if time travel actually does exist, it would certainly explain how a man named Stan Hart looks so similar to Pietro Loredan, the chief magistrate of Venice, as elected in 1567, captured in a portrait in the Kimball Art Museum in Texas. You'd just swap his blue baseball cap for Loredan's fancy schmancy hat, and you'd be looking at the exact same person. The internet's most famous doppelganger spotter is Rebecca Fleener, a journalist who went viral in 2017 after her friend snapped this photo of her at San Francisco's Legion of Honor Museum. The broken pitcher was painted back in 1891, and although the girl in the portrait is visibly younger than Rebecca, the resemblance is uncanny. These two photos of other women who found themselves on display in prestigious museums are almost as convincing. The first is Redditor Cudness, who found herself at the Berlin Museum of Modern Art. In this painting of a mythical satyr, the artwork in question is by Julie Wolfthorne, who created it around 1900 whilst in Rome. Art critics have questioned whether the creature is a boy or a girl, but if this side-by-side is anything to go by, it's clearly a woman. Give Cudness a flute and she's a perfect match. The second woman is posing with a portrait named Juno by famous 17th century Dutch artist Rembrandt. Juno is the goddess of marriage, women, and childbirth in ancient Roman mythology, and Rembrandt paints her with such realism it's no wonder she found a modern-day doppelganger. But to be able to say, yeah, I've been told I look like a Rembrandt painting of a Roman goddess, is a massive ego boost.
She's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment.
Redditor Squirrel Master shared a photo of his friend posing with an eerily similar portrait in the Cleveland Museum of Art. Portrait of Vincenzo Guarioni was painted by Giovanni Battista Moroni in 1572, and its subject came from a prominent Italian family. By sheer coincidence, our doppelganger here is even wearing a shirt and a black overcoat, almost mirroring Guarioni's outfit. Clearly, some fashion trends really do remain timeless, but he isn't the only art lover who looks like an old Italian nobility. Portrait of a nobleman with dueling gauntlets was painted in 1562 by an unknown Italian artist, and this anonymous man matches both the pose and the outfit of the subject.
Well, Lottie frickin' God!
The piece is displayed in the Philadelphia Art Museum, but I think this guy's outfit is too perfect to be a coincidence. Although it's fun to imagine him spotting the nobleman's painting, rushing home to suit up, and returning to the gallery just to create this epic moment. Finding yourself in a museum isn't always a good thing, especially when you get trapped in one trying to perform a heist. This is what happened to Richard Anthony Smith in 2008 and his attempt to escape Tennessee's Knoxville Museum of Art will leave your jaw on the floor. 4:27 a.m. one Wednesday morning, police and firefighters were called after a burglar breaking into the Knoxville Museum got himself stuck in an air vent and called 911 for help. Richard had used the rope from the building's flagpole to lower himself into the vent, but unfortunately the chute was too narrow, even for his 5'5", 135-pound frame. But it wasn't just the fact that Richard had gotten himself stuck that amused the rescuers. As it turns out, Richard had made some pretty out-there statements during his 911 call. On the phone, the burglar told the operator that he had broken into the museum on a top-secret mission assigned to him by the Illuminati and that he was professionally known as Secret Agent 0931. As part of his mission, Richard had to rappel into the museum and defuse a Soviet nuclear bomb hidden in a blue cow sculpture in the basement. However, after he'd gotten stuck in the vent, he was conveniently informed that the bomb was actually in a different museum. Oh, okay. Unfortunately, the noble intentions and serious mission he professed didn't fool the authorities. After his rescue, the police charged Richard with aggravated burglary, sending him to the Knox County Jail with a $2,000 bail bond. That bail fee was the only bond this secret agent was worthy of, though it still had a license to kill by murdering Richard's bank balance. In a moment, we'll check out some other ridiculous ways that people have become trapped in museums. But first, let's look at another artistic prank. In May 2016, visitors at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art discovered a thought-provoking exhibit, a pair of regular glasses placed on the floor. The artists behind the apparent stroke of genius, two teenagers, 16 and 17, TJ Kayetan and Kevin Nguyen. Apparently, they were both enjoying the artwork on display when they found that one of the exhibits was a regular stuffed animal sitting on a gray blanket. Then they started questioning why people would call such a thing art. So, to test the theory out that people would be impressed by anything in a gallery setting, TJ set a pair of glasses down and walked away. And soon, people began to surround the glasses, careful to maintain a safe distance around the artwork. Talk about a spectacle. Teenagers were awestruck to see their masterpiece being admired. But even though it was all meant for a laugh, instead of criticizing modern art, TJ went on to praise it. He said that while some may interpret modern art as a joke, it's interesting to see how people find great spiritual meaning in it, or at the very least, find pleasure in making sense of random everyday objects. We can't discuss artistic doppelgangers without including a few famous faces in the mix. One of the internet's most beloved A-listers is Keanu Reeves, and it turns out that John Wick can be seen in more places than the silver screen. A Reddit user found this painting by Italian artist Parmigiano in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. The work, titled Portrait of a Man, was created in 1530, but the man in question looks suspiciously like Keanu. And now I'm wondering if the actor really isn't a time traveler. After all, he has aged suspiciously well.
You're breathtaking!
This painting, by Spanish artist Ignacio Zulaga, is titled Portrait of Donna Carmen Arconada, and it's believed to have been created around 1942. Carmen is certainly a glamorous woman painted in a silk pink dress, but one user on Imager believes they've found her perfect modern doppelganger. Any guesses? It's Michael Cera! And you know what? I kinda see it. The actor definitely makes a beautiful woman.
You're being really immature.
Hold up. Harry Potter and Jake Peralta in the same room?
What is this? A crossover episode?
This looks like an edited flashback picture in a movie, but incredibly, while the picture wasn't found in a museum, it's a real high school yearbook photograph from 1978, taken the year Andy Samberg was born, and predating Daniel Radcliffe entirely. The resemblance is uncanny, and I wonder if these guys are out there solving crimes together with a wand in one hand and a detective badge in the other. Peter Dinklage is best known for playing the wise, wine-drinking Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones, but he's also the spitting image of Sebastian de Mora in this portrait by Diego Velázquez. Like Dinklage, de Mora had a form of dwarfism, and he was part of King Philip IV's royal court in Spain during the 1640s, when having a court dwarf was a common practice. They were often viewed as jesters, and they'd stand next to the king during public appearances to make them seem larger and stronger. The practice was messed up, but the court dwarfed and criticized powerful people without consequence. I think Tyrion would approve of that. If you visit the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, you'll find two famous faces for the price of one, in this portrait of Paul Revere. I'm sure I don't have to tell you just which famous actor he looks like. You see the resemblance? The real Revere might not have fought cartoon animals with kung fu, but he did become the unsung hero of the American Revolution by famously warning American soldiers in Boston that the British are coming. It's actually disputed whether Revere really shouted this legendary phrase, but John Singleton Copley created this painting of the American hero in 1768, unaware that over 250 years later, his portrait would be compared to Jack Black in my video. You know what? I'm surprised Jack Black hasn't already been approached to play him in a movie. Staying on famous faces, it seems that Justin Timberlake's past life was even more criminal than his music career. Charles Burns, Timberlake's troublesome doppelganger, was an English miner and convicted criminal who appeared in a museum in Newcastle, New England. In 1873, he was thrown in jail after attempting to steal a pair of pants and a waistcoat from the tailors. He was subsequently sentenced to 3 months' imprisonment for his misdemeanors. This photograph is actually his mugshot, but in my opinion, it looks much more refined and elegant than Timberlake's. I wonder if Charles Burns shouted, "This is gonna ruin the tour!" when he was arrested too. If you want to see lots of identical celebrity doppelgangers at once, then whatever you do, don't visit the Polina Waxworks in Krakow, Poland. If you've been to Madame Tussauds, you'll know just how bad these Polish imitations look in comparison. To start it all off, you have a marvelously exaggerated Rowan Atkinson as Mr. Bean standing outside the entrance. And when you get inside, the UK's Prince William looks anything but princely, and his wife, Kate Middleton, looks like she's taken too many naughty substances with a maniacal grin on her face. Queen Elizabeth's statue is practically a crime, apart from her crown and sash. Poor old Lizzie looks totally unrecognizable and frankly, kind of deranged. Couldn't they have at least brushed her hair? And moving on, Robert De Niro looks almost as orange as Donald Trump and much less intimidating than the gangsters he often plays. And it seems they've taken the orange makeup off Trump and given it to De Niro because this stiff, pale Donnie is almost unrecognizable without it. Polonia Waxworks isn't the only museum with rogue royals in Hollywood horrors. And Louis Tussauds' House of Wax in Norfolk, England, was widely known as the worst waxworks in the world before it closed down. Now just take a look at Prince William here. He looks nothing like his real self, even back when he still had hair. And a young King Charles looks dead in the eyes, and the rest of the royals look equally as rough. As for the Beatles, well, something tells me that they wouldn't be nearly as successful if they'd actually look like these guys. Louis Tussauds opened all the way back in 1954, but unfortunately, it closed down when the owners retired in 2013. However, you can still get your wonky waxwork fix in the Brazilian town of Rolândia with this exhibition that went viral in 2021. Marilyn Monroe, one of the most glamorous stars in history, was reduced to a large, misshapen lump with a dollar store wig, whilst Lady Diana looked more like a deranged prom queen from a horror movie than the People's Princess. And speaking of royals, the King of Rock and Roll has never looked worse, as Elvis' famous lip-curling smirk has melted into an awkward, lopsided grin. And things only got from bad to, well, I don't even know how to describe what's happening to Nelson Mandela over here. The former South African president's blue skin makes him look more like Papa Smurf than a revered world leader. And Albert Einstein hasn't fared much better. He doesn't have the thoughtful look of someone trying to figure out that E equals MC squared, but rather that he forgot to turn the oven off and is afraid of the mess that awaits him back home. Oops. Or maybe he's trying to figure out where his neck is gone. Lots of other famous faces were given the wax treatment at Rolândia, From Mahatma Gandhi to Queen Elizabeth, Freddie Mercury, and Charlie Chaplin, the artist responsible for these atrocities is Arlindo Armacolo, who created the works in 2015 for his father's waxwork museum. He used 2 pounds of wax per statue and worked on them with nothing but reference images. He stated that he doesn't care if people don't like his work, which is the kind of confidence that I wish I had in life. I'm no wax artist, but I still don't think I could have created a blue Nelson Mandela and then put it in an exhibition for the world to see. Now, we've already looked at some crazy ways that people have damaged pieces of art, but this next story is absolutely bananas. Maurizio Catalan's 2019 artwork Comedian is composed of a single banana duct taped to a wall, and it's become the poster child for controversial contemporary art. Incredibly, Catalan released 3 versions of the piece, and 2 of them were bought for $120,000. The buyers didn't actually get a banana stuck to the wall, and instead, they were provided with detailed instructions and diagrams about how to create the display themselves. Then the inevitable happened. When Comedian was displayed in 2019 Art Basel show in Miami, another artist called David DeTuna pulled Catalan's $120,000 banana off the wall and ate it. DeTuna later explained that he wasn't just a prankster with a craving for bananas, and eating the banana was just his own artistic performance piece that he called Hungry Artist. I just can't keep up. What is art? Either way, in 2023, a South Korean student recreated Hungry Artist by eating another one of Catalan's bananas displayed at Seoul's Leum Museum of Art. Though this time he did thoughtfully reattach the peel to the wall, keeping some of the installation intact. Luckily for both snackers, Catalan has publicly said that he doesn't mind if someone eats the bananas, as they're already replaced every few days so they don't rot. Fast forward to 2024, and a crypto entrepreneur called Justin Sun bought a version of the banana installment for $6.2 million at Sotheby's. The banana he received was purchased the day of the auction for 35 cents from a fruit stand in Manhattan. Now that's gotta be the worst case of hyperinflation ever. Sun received the banana, a roll of duct tape, and instructions on how to install the artwork with a certificate of authenticity, but instead of putting it on display, Sun decided to eat it. He gathered a load of journalists at a swanky hotel in Hong Kong so they could capture the moment, when Sun claiming that eating it was now part of the artwork's history. At this point, I'm not sure whether Catalan's banana is art or the world's most expensive snack. $10? Try $6 million.
I mean, it's one banana, Michael. What could it cost? $10?
In 2015, visitors to the Dallas Museum of Art surrounded and fawned over a massive art installation themed around destruction, only to find out it was an actual accident. The phony art piece in question was a crane that was working to install a tent for an upcoming gala, but a weight imbalance caused the operator to tip the machinery over straight into the museum's roof. The vehicle was left balancing precariously on its back wheels angled toward the sky, and admittedly, given its location, right next to an art gallery, you can sort of understand why people mistook it for an art piece. Aside from the scene accidentally looking somewhat staged, by a strange coincidence, the incident actually followed several destruction-themed art happenings throughout Dallas, one of which included the artists kicking the living daylights out of a wooden structure they built because art. Pretty hardcore, right? By those standards, a fallen crane outside really does fit the bill. Plus, how many crane drivers can say their workplace accident was momentarily featured as an art piece at a genuine gallery? In September 2014, a 32-year-old homeless man called Raj Patel entered the Tate Britain Art Gallery in London, not to browse the exhibits, but to use the public restroom. Somehow, Raj fell asleep on the porcelain throne, and when he woke up 2 hours later, the museum had been locked up for the night. While the opportunity to enjoy some fine art in peace may have been appealing, Raj instead hurried around for nearly 10 minutes in desperate search of a security guard to let him out. When they finally found one, they just let him go without asking for so much as his name. No one even inquired how he'd gotten himself locked inside, despite some of the gallery's artworks being worth millions of dollars. Not exactly what I'd call top-notch security. In 2013, Reddit user Datman510 was wandering around the Met in New York when he came across a photograph of himself. Unbelievably, the photo was taken over 120 years ago, and it shows a guy called Bashford Dean, who traveled through Japan around the year 1900. He was an avid collector of arms and armor, which is why he's seen here in traditional Japanese samurai clothing. By the time Bashford passed away in 1923, he had established the Met's Department of Arms and Armor as the best of its kind in the modern era, with countless items collected and donated along the way. But personally, I'm not sure that he did die, and I think we might be looking at a modern-day vampire taking a selfie with himself. In 2021, a Reddit user uploaded a picture of a man posing below a bust that depicts his perfect doppelganger. The sculpture actually shows Pierre de Coubertin, who was the founder of the modern Olympic Games and helped organize the first competition in Greece in 1896. Coubertin's legacy lives on in the Lausanne Olympic Museum in Switzerland, where our modern Pierre found his famous twin.
Nice.
Other people have found their spitting image in sculptures out in public. Posted under an article about doppelgangers, Chastity Kitchens commented with a picture of herself emulating the pose from a statue called The Gossipers. The resemblance, and the overswept hair particularly, is so good she could pass for a relative. The bronze statue was created by the Canadian artist Rose Amy Bellingers in 2002, and today it sits in a corner outside the Galerie Le Royer in Montreal. It's supposed to show three women having a scandalous conversation, but with the addition of Chastity, the group now have a fourth person to gossip with. In contrast, the subject of this next piece of art is a bit more shy. In the Mikhailovsky Palace in St. Petersburg, Russia, a Dutch woman called Anna took a picture of herself in front of N.A. Yaroshenko's painting called Girl Student. No name is given to the mysterious student in the portrait from 1880. But we don't have to look very far to see how she would have looked when she grew up. Piet Mondrian was a Dutch painter in the earliest 20th century, known for his abstract art involving blocks of color and intersecting lines. He's widely considered one of the greatest artists from the 1900s. But in 2022, a visitor at Germany's North Rhine-Westphalia art collection discovered that one of his most famous pieces of art had been hung upside down for 75 years. Mondrian's piece, New York City 1, was created in 1941 and consists of colored tape that's meant to represent a simplified city and skyline.
If you say so.
Somehow, when the piece was first displayed at MoMA in New York, they hung it the wrong way up. And when it moved to Germany in 1980, they made the same mistake. The clue, the thicker blue tape that was supposed to represent the skyline was hanging at the bottom instead of the top. The error was only spotted when a clever curator visited the gallery and compared the painting to a photo from 1944 that showed the piece inside Mondrian's studio. Incredibly, this exact mistake was predicted by the kids' show Arthur in 1997, when the character Binky Barnes discovered a Mondrian painting had been hung sideways.
Don't you see? It's hanging sideways.
Unfortunately, unlike the cartoon, the gallery couldn't fix the problem. The pieces of tape had become so fragile that they could easily fall off if the painting was flipped and gravity pulled them in the opposite direction. In light of this, curators decided the upside-down mishap is now part of the painting's history, and it will stay inverted. To be honest, I can't really tell the difference anyway.
Need you to find the differences between this picture and this picture.
Okay, I already see one. Give me. Okay.
They're the same picture.
In July 2016, NFL player Lewis Morris Murphy Jr. attended a wedding held at the dazzling catering suite at the Flagler Museum in Palm Beach, Florida. After enjoying himself a little too much at the open bar, Lewis briefly went to rest his eyes in the enclosed garden courtyard. Next thing he knew, he woke up well after midnight and found the museum had closed. Instead of channeling his inner Ben Stiller and exploring the museum after dark, Lewis, in confusion and nervousness, called 911 for help and broke one of the glass doors to unlock it. He caused about $1,000 worth of damages, but the police finally arrived at 1 a.m., setting Lewis free and leaving him with the memory of his strange night at the museum and the bill for the damages. In 2024, Dutch art lovers at the Lamb Museum in Lies received some shocking news. The museum's elevator technician had removed a piece of art from the gallery. But before you brand him a thief, he didn't just take the painting off the wall and run away with it. Instead, he mistook the artwork for trash. Why? Because it is trash, and that's not my opinion, that's a fact. French artist Alexandre Lavet's All the Good Times We Spent Together consists of 2 hand-painted beer cans on an elevator roof. The poor elevator technician was working in the museum and thought some inconsiderate person had left their beer up there, so he picked it up and threw it in the trash. Luckily, the cans were rescued, cleaned up, and given a proper place at the museum entrance on a plinth. The exhibit was meant to represent food and consumption, with Lavet's work supposedly a nod to a nostalgic past, drinking and socializing with his buddies way back when. Lesson learned: don't judge a can by its cover. Which crazy museum story was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and why not check out my video on the strange things found in statues. Thanks for watching.